G'day and welcome to the second AOS Coach preview video into the Disciples of Tzeentch Battletome for 2022. In this video, I'm going to focus on the key Warscroll changes and the new points. And to avoid making this video too long, there is a separate Tzeentch allegiance abilities, spells, sub-faction, match play rules like the grand strategies. There's a battalion for you. So there's another video you'll want to watch after this, or maybe you want to pause this one now, go to that one first. But together, we'll have a nice holistic view of the 2022 Battletome. Games Workshop did send me this book in advance to preview, however, they'll have no involvement in the creation of this video. Now let's get into all the change, and there is a fair amount of micro changes that are happening. There are some lost rules, there are some gained rules, but there's probably nothing too groundbreaking. Kairos Fateweaver is the first one we'll look at. Kairos's wound characteristic has changed. He's now gained 2 wounds, so he used to be on 14, he's now on 16, while the movement, the save, the bravery all remain the same. It's still a wizard with 3 casts and 3 unbinds. You've still got the Master of Magic ability, as well as both the melee attacks with the Staff of Tomorrow and the Beaks remain unchanged. It did lose the ability to cast Wizard Warscroll spells if you were within 18 inches of Kairos, but it has gained the Beacon of Sorcery, and that gives you +1 to your casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for friendly Tzeentch wizards that are wholly within 18 inches of Kairos. And in addition, it knows all of the spells from the Law of Change, which is the demon side of the spell lore. Now, there was a significant change with Spell Eater. Spell Eater used to be that ability that could eat an endless spell and auto unbind it. You've lost it, but you've gained a rule called Spell Thief. So Spell Eater becomes Spell Thief. I really like Spell Thief because what it does is if you successfully dispel an endless spell, so you'll still need to roll for it, instead of removing it and dispelling it off the table, basically Kairos steals it from your opponent. So you get to gain control of that endless spell, and it counts as if Kairos summoned it until it's dispelled or someone else steals it. So if you're in a mirror match and there's a Kairos versus Kairos, you could probably steal each other's endless spells. But I love this particular ability because it's going to make people think twice when they summon that. Again, the Purple Sun or some type of offensive, Ravenashing Jaws, you can send it straight back at your opponent. The big change for me is the Oracle of Eternity rule. I know a lot of people really like this ability that allowed you to, once per battle, replace a single dice roll. Unfortunately, that's completely disappeared. And what the Oracle of Eternity now does is at the start of your hero phase, if you have less than 9 Destiny dice, you can roll a dice and add it to your Destiny dice pool. Now, both the Lord of Change and Kairos have a modified damage table, and that damage table is now only 4 levels. So 0 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 plus. And this will obviously come into play as well for things like some of your spells and other abilities. You have lost Gift of Change, which I believe was a spell that allowed you to do 6 mortal wounds, and if it slayed a model, you would bring you in a Chaos Spawn, but in its place, you have gained Infernal Gateway, which you already might be familiar with from the Lord of Change. And Infernal Gateway, if you're unfamiliar, has a casting value of 7 and a range of 18. If successfully cast one enemy unit, you get to roll 9 dice, and the unit suffers 1 mortal wound for each roll that is equal or greater to the Infernal Gateway, which, as I mentioned, will be on your damage table. It's the same as the Lord of Change if you've already been playing with it. Speaking of the Lord of Change, the move, the save, the bravery, the wounds all remain the same. The 3 different weapon options are still there. You've still got 2 casts, 2 unbinds, and it's still got Master of Magic. Where the changes have come about, the Baleful Sword has got +1 attack, so now it's 3 attacks. It used to be only 2, but everything else like the Rod of Sorcery, the Staff of Tzeentch, the Baleful Sword, and the Beak, basically all the characteristics remain unchanged. You do also lose the Spell Eater, so I mentioned that on Kairos, you've also lost the Spell Eater ability. And to not confuse you, it lost the old Spell Thief ability, and that was an ability that allowed you to, I think, steal an enemy spell if you unbound it on a 9+. It's now gained the Spell Thief. So you've lost old Spell Thief, you've gained new Spell Thief. New Spell Thief is what I just discussed with Kairos, where he can steal endless spells on a dispel attempt. It too has a revised monster table that now has 4 levels, 0 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 plus. The last change on the Lord of Change would be Infernal Gateway, and it's very much like it used to be, but you will find that the Mortal Wound dice roll will drop off a little bit more when you're injured. I think in the last book there was a lot of like middle table kind of like you're doing Infernal Gateways on 4s. Now the way it works is if you have 0 to 6 wounds suffered, Infernal Gateway is a 3 up. On a 7 to 9 wounds suffered, it's a 4 up. 10 to 12, it's a 5 up. And if you're on your final wounds at 13 plus, you are on a 6 up to do Infernal Gateway. So you probably don't do as many as you're damaged. Now looking at your minor heroes, your Fateskimmer has a reduced movement. It used to be 16, it's now a 14, but it has got a save improvement. So it used to be 5, it's now a save characteristic of 4, which is pretty sweet. The bravery, the wounds, the missile and melee profiles, as well as the 1 cast and 1 unbind are relatively unchanged, although I do say relatively unchanged because the lamprey bite has slightly gotten worse, just minor. There is a change when it comes to the Arcane Tome, which is once per battle, you can re-roll 1 of your casting rolls, and if you do so, you get to add 3 to the new casting roll, so you're going to get an improved re-roll, but what it used to be, if you remember it, was roll 3d6 for your casting attempt and drop the lowest. So that's gone, and that'll be true of everyone who has the Arcane Tome, like the Fluxmaster. And as we go through, I'll refer to this. The Sky Shark's ability, which used to do a bunch of mortal wounds to monsters, is no longer there. Anyone that had Sky Sharks, it's no longer there. So you'll hear this a few times as well. The Wake of Fire has changed, and it's a good change because previously if you moved over a unit on a 2+, it used to do D3 wounds. Now it includes run and retreat moves as well. So previously it didn't, it was only normal move. Now it's move, run, or retreats. Pass over and you'll do D3 mortal wounds on a 2-up. And then finally the Tzeentch Firestorm cast on a 9. It's a little bit harder than it used to be. It used to be a casting roll of an 8+. It still has range of a 9, but it does the D3 mortal wounds on a 2+. Previously, it used to be a 3+. The Fluxmaster also has seen an improvement on its save characteristic. It's now a 4+, but its move, bravery, wounds, missile, and melee profiles are the same. It's a 1 caster, 1 unbinder. Much like the Fateskimmer, the Arcane Tome on the Fluxmaster has changed as well. Same rule, once per battle, you can reroll 1 casting roll for the unit, add 3 to that new casting roll. And the Blue Fire of Tzeentch spell has also changed. It's a casting value of 8, range 18. If successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit that's range invisible. You get to roll 9 dice, and every 5 up, it suffers 1 mortal wound, and you increase your fate pool by 1, so you'll get a couple of extra points. So previously, it used to do mortals on 5. It just never gave you the fate points. Finally, you've got the Curseling, and the Curseling has the same move, save, bravery, and wounds as it always did. The melee profile hasn't changed. The Puckerish Mixed Direction hasn't changed. It still casts 2 spells, and it still unbinds 2 spells. It did lose the ability that allowed you to know enemy wizard spells within 9 inches of it, which is unfortunate. And there is a minor language tweak when it comes to Arch Deceiver. So now the Changeling is removed after deployment, but before the first battle round. It was previously at the start of the first battle round. It's the same thing, but it's a minor tweak. There are more heroes that you look at. We have the Changecaster, which has the same move, save, bravery, and wounds. The Magical Flames missile weapon is the same, so is the Staff of Change and the Ritual Dagger. It's still a 1 caster and 1 unbinder. The Arcane Tome we've talked about already twice now. Same rule, it gets to reroll 1 cast once per battle and add +3 to that. It lost the Fortune and Fate ability that used to give you an extra spell to cast if you cast a spell before it on a 9-up. It's no longer there. And the other change that's happened is the Pink Fire of Tzeentch is casting on a 7, range 18, and if you're successfully casting that spell, you get to pick 1 enemy unit that's range invisible and subtract 1 from the save characteristic until that next hero phase. Previously, that spell used to be cast on a 9 and it would do d6 mortal wounds. Now it's a debuff as opposed to a mortal wound dealer. The blue scribe has the same move, the same bravery, and the same wounds characteristic. The melee profile hasn't changed, but what has changed is it's got an improvement on its save. So it's also a save of 4 up. You will notice a lot of your heroes have gained a save improvement, which is great news for you. Frantic Scribbling has changed, and if this unit is a part of a Disciples of Tzeentch army, each time an enemy wizard within 9 inches casts a spell successfully and it's not unbound, you roll a dice, and on a 3+, you receive 1 fate point. Previously, it used to learn spells within 18 inches. Now it's just generating you fate points. The Scroll of Sorcery has also changed, and that means that the Blue Scribe knows both all of the spells from the Law of Fate and the Law of Change. And in addition, once per battle, you can read from your scroll, and on a 2+, that spell is going to be automatically cast and it cannot be unbound. The last thing when it comes to the Blue Scribe is it's lost the Boon of Tzeentch ability, and that was the re-rolling casting bubble. But hey, while Chronomatic Cogs got redone for this General's Handbook, most people had dropped the Blue Scribe because Chronomatic Cogs was a cheaper version of the re-roll the cast. But now the Blue Scribe's completely lost that ability. The Ogreoid Thermitage has the same move, bravery, wounds, and the Choking Tendrils remains the same. It too gained a change to its armor save, and it's now a save of 4+. You have gained a +1 to hit on your Cloven Hooves, although everything else on that melee profile remains the same, and it's also a single caster and a single unbinder. It did lose 2 abilities, the Brutal Rage and the Mighty Bulk, but in its place you gained Berserker Rage, and what that allows you to do is you gain +1 to hit rolls and +1 to wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons if this unit has any wounds or mortal wounds allocated earlier in this phase. So I guess run it into combat, take some damage, and then you can fight back. Continuing with the sub-commanders, the Fate Master has the same move, bravery, wounds, and the Soulbound Shield. Though it too has gained a boost on its save, it's now a save of 3+. Also, what's changed is the Fireglaive of Tzeentch now wounds on a 3. It used to be a 4, now on 3. And it's also gained Rend -1, where previously it had no Rend. You have lost the Hovering Disc of Tzeentch ability. Now, you still ride a disc, but the ability used to give you +1 to your save unless the attack was coming from a monster or a flying unit. Now, the base characteristic is just built in, and it's now a 3-up save. So you can get it down to 2 with a Mystic Shield or all-out defense, whatever it might be. And the last change when it comes to the Fate Master is the Lord of Fate. You get to add 1 to the wound roll for attacks made by friendly Disciples of Tzeentch models that are wholly within 9 inches of the Fate Master. Previously, it used to give you a bunch of rerolls. One of the ones that I'm really excited to talk about is the Gaunt Summoner. Now, the Gaunt Summoner's move, save, bravery, wounds remain the same. It is a 2-caster with 2 unbinds, so that still remains the same. There are some modifications with the weapon profile. So the Change Staff has gained 2 extra attacks. It now wounds on a 3. It used to be a 4. It's gained Rend -1. It never had Rend before. And it used to have D3 damage. It's now a flat 1 damage. The Warpstone Blade has lost its ability to do D6 mortal wounds on a roll of a 6-2 wound. You have gained +1 attack. You have gained +1 to your wound. You have gained Rend -2. And you are gaining D3 damage. But I know some people did like the idea of this D6 mortal wounds, although a 5 wound wizard is probably not someone I want to be getting into combat immediately. The Book of Profane Secrets has changed, and it now gives you +1 to your casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for the Gaunt Summoner, and in addition, it knows the spells from the Law of Fate. That used to give you a free summon. Unfortunately, it no longer gives you the free summon. It does know all the spells from the spell lore. There are 2 new abilities that you might want to consider. The first one is the Lord of the Silver Towers, and once per battle at the end of the phase, you can pick 1 enemy hero that's within 9 inches of the Gaunt Summoner and has made an attack against the Gaunt Summoner in that phase. or it's caused some mortal wounds to a unit with the ability in that phase. So even if like the Gaunt Summoner was to negate those wounds or mortal wounds, it still would allow you to trigger this ability. So what is the Lord of the Silver Towers? You get to roll 2d6, and if the roll is greater than the wounds characteristic of that hero is just flat out slain. It's removed from play. The other new ability is the Silvered Portal, and after you've deployed the Gaunt Summoner, and you would normally go to then set up another friendly Tzeentch unit that's not a monster, you can say that it's hiding in the Gaunt Tower's Silver Tower as a reserve unit. Now you can put up to 2 units to be in reserve in this way, and then at the end of any of your movement phase, you can set up 1 or more of these units on the battlefield, so long as they're within 9 inches of the Gaunt Summoner, as well as outside of 9 inches from enemy units. Now, you do need to deploy them before the start of the 4th battle round. If you don't, they are going to be counted as destroyed. The final change is the internal flames, and you get to roll 5 dice instead of 3 dice if you target a monster or a war machine, but everything else with the internal flames has remained the same. Now, the Gaunt Summoner on disc is very similar to the Gaunt Summoner on foot. The only rule change that I noticed is that it's got an improved save characteristic. It's now at 4. I believe it was previously on a 6, but otherwise the move, the bravery, the wounds all remains the same, just poured over some of the abilities that I spoke about with the Gaunt Summoner on foot. Yeah, Zangor Shaman has also seen a save improvement, going up to a 4-up save. Although the move, the bravery, the wounds are the same, so is the melee weapon, so is the single caster and single unbinder. There was a change with the Sorcerer Elixir, and that was once per battle. In your hero phase, you can attempt to cast 1 extra spell. If you do so, you get to add 3 to that casting roll, which is awesome. Though it has lost the Visions of the Past, which used to be a +1 to hit bubble that you would often see the Zangor Shaman following your Skyfires and your Enlighten. So that one sucks a little bit. The other big change is the Boona mutation, and where that's changed is that when you bring back a Zangor model with the Boona mutation, unfortunately now it only is for Zangor host. It's keyworded Zangor host, so you can't bring back Enlighten or Skyfires, you can't bring back a champion, or you can't bring back a mutant either. It will allow you to go above the unit size, but it's very much more specific on what you can bring back with the mutation. Voltimus, the All-Seeing, still has the same move, save, bravery, wounds. It still is a single caster and a single unbinder. It has seen some changes when it comes to the magical touch that I'll talk a bit later about on the Magister. The same rule it's got on the Magister and the Magister on disc. It has seen some other changes, the Sorcerer Insight. It's the same spell. It still allows you to generate 1 extra command point. However, the command point must be spent on at the double Forward to Victory or Inspiring Presence. There is a couple of extra minor changes across the attack profile, a couple of extra attacks here and there, nothing to flash, but a change nonetheless. I did talk about the Magister. The Magister on foot has the same move, the same save, the same bravery, the same wounds. The Tzeentchian Rune Staff and the Warp Steel Sword have all stayed the same, so is the single caster, single unbinder, and the Bolt of Change. Where it has actually changed on this Warscroll, as alluded to in Voltimus, is Magic Touched. And if the first casting attempt made by this unit in the hero phase is successful and the spell is not unbound, this unit can attempt to cast 1 extra spell in that phase. Now, here's the kicker. If you cast a spell and it is a double, it automatically fails and the unit is slain. So if it happens, you can choose if it turns into a spawn or if it's slain. And the Magister on disc is the same. It has the same change to Magic Touched. It has improvement of its save characteristic, so it's on a 4, not a 5 anymore. And it has the same move, Bravery, Wounds. The rest is the same. Your Horrors of Tzeentch are the same. You have the same move, save, bravery, wounds. The melee missile weapon profiles are the same. Split Again, Petty Vengeance, Standard Bearer, Musician, all the same. No changes noticed. Your Burning Chariot has an improved save characteristic. It's now on a 4, used to be a 5, though the movement, the bravery, and the wounds remain the same. There is a change when it comes to your Billowing Warp Flame. It is now reduced attacks by 2. So it used to be 6 attacks. It's now down to 4. It hits on a 4 with its Flaming Maw, so it's got a slight improvement there. The Lamprey Bites now hits on a 3, and it's gained a little bit of rend as well. The big change for me when it comes to the Burning Chariot, though, is that it is elite. So it now can issue its own commands. The Caprius Warp Flamer has gained +1 to hit rolls when you target a unit of 5 or more. It used to be if the target unit was 10 or more, so it's gotten a lot easier to gain your +1 to hit. I did mention earlier in this video that Sky Sharks was removed, and this is another unit that's lost the Sky Sharks ability, as well as Touch by Fire. So that was a ability that would splash back mortal wounds on a 5-up. Sky Sharks and Touch by Fire are both gone. And Wake by Fire, which I believe I've already talked about with the Fateskimmer, that has also changed and moved across to the Burning Chariot. So if you move, run, or charge across a unit on a 2-up, it does D3 mortal wounds to the unit. Your Chaos Spawn has the same move, the same save, the same bravery, the same wounds characteristic. Where it has gained and changed, it's gained a rule called the Spawn of Sorcery, and this reminds me a lot of Nurglings, but in its own Tzeentchian way. The way that Spawn of Sorcery works is you get to heal all the wounds allocated to the Disciples of Tzeentch Chaos Spawn if a wizard within 9 inches of this unit successfully casts a spell and it's not unbound. The other change is the Withering Tentacles, and if the unmodified hit roll for the attack made by the Freakish mutation is a 6, the target suffers 1 mortal wound and the attack sequence ends. Formerly, you would get +1 to hit and +1 to wound if you rolled a double on the amount of attacks you got. Now it's doing mortal wounds instead of regular damage. When it comes to your Screamers, the move, the save, the bravery, the wounds are the same. Your Lamprey Bite now hits on 3s as well. It too lost the Sky Sharks ability, and the Slashing Fins has seen a bit of a change. It now also includes run and retreat. So if you move, run, and retreat, it does some mortal wounds on a 4+. It used to be a 5+, but it did lose a part of its ability. It used to do D3 mortal wounds if it passed over a wizard. That part of it is no longer there, so there's no boost to do damage to wizards. The Exalted Flamer has the same move, bravery, and wounds. It has also seen a boost to its save. It's now a save of 4+. It's gained +2 attacks to its Billowing Warp Flame, and that is now at 6 attacks, although the rest of that is the same. You've gained +1 to hit on the Flaming Maws, so it hits on a 4. It's also gained a Rend -1, and the rest of the Flaming Maw attack is the same. The Caprius Warp Flamer is like the others we've spoken about, and that is gaining +1 to hit when you target a unit with 5 or more models. That used to be 10, and it too lost the Touch by Fire that I've previously discussed. The Flamers of Tzeentch have the same move, bravery, and wounds characteristic, and it too saw a boost to its save, so it's now a save of 4+, used to be 5. There's a funny little change with the Warp Flame missile weapon where the hit and wound roll has now flipped. So it used to hit on a 4 and wound on a 3. It now hits on a 3 and wounds on a 4. The Flaming Maw gets +1 attack, now on attacks 3. It also now hits on a 3, wounds on a 4, so there's a nice little boost there. The rest remains the same. The Caprius Warp Flamer also gains +1 to hit rolls when you're attacking 5 or more models. It too lost the Touch by Fire. And the most interesting change for me, which is a little bit funny, but it's also caused a lot of questions for me now. If you watch my video, or if you picked up the Arcane Cataclysm box, you saw a bunch of changes across the Karak Acolytes and some of the other units. Now, what's really interesting is the Battletome has revoked a lot, if not all of those changes. So if I talk about the Karak Acolytes here, it still has the same move, the same bravery, and the same wounds. Now, it used to be a save of 5+. The Arcane Cataclysm moved them to a 6. They're back to save 5. They're also back to having being a wizard. So in that box, they lost the wizard keyword. They now are wizards. The Scroll of Dark Arts used to give you +1 to their casting and unbinding. That's back. And the Gestalt Sorcery spell that was on the Warscroll but were removed from Arcane Cataclysm is back. So it's almost like they completely retconned that little box and it's made me question these changes moving forward. I didn't notice a lot of changes when it comes to your Zangor. I did notice that the Beasts of Chaos keywords that it used to have were removed from the book. However, if you look at the Warhammer community site, you will see an FAQ that's been published recently to say that those keywords should be added back to the Warscroll. So I guess there were no noticeable changes when it came to your Zangor. Your Zangor Skyfires still have the same move, the same bravery, the same wounds, and judgment from afar. You have gained a boost to your save, so they're now a save of 4+. You have seen a improvement on your vicious beak attacks. It used to hit on 5s, it now hits on 3s. Otherwise, that's all the same. The Aviarch, which is the champion in that unit, no longer gives it +1 to hit. It now gets +1 attack. The Guided by the Future has changed as well. And what the new Guided by the Future does is you get to ignore negative modifiers to hit and wounds for attacks made for the missile weapons. So if there's some debuffs or things like that, you ignore them completely on both your hit and your wound roll. But the thing that I more enjoy here is that you also get to ignore positive modifiers to save rolls. So if they've used, I don't know, all out defense, mystic shield, cover, and you're shooting at them with your missile weapons, you get to ignore the positive modifiers. Doesn't change the melee stuff. It's purely just your shooting attacks. Your Zangor Enlighten on disc didn't really seem to change. It appeared that the move, the save, the bravery, the wounds, the melee weapons, the babbling stream of secrets, everything is the same as it used to be. And then your Zangor Enlightened on foot have the same move, bravery, and wounds as they always did. The save is also a 4+. The Vicious Beak is similar to what I mentioned with the Skyfires. You now wound on 3s. Your Babbling Stream of Secrets is the same now as your Zangor Enlightened on disc. And the Guided by the Past is the same as the Zangor Enlightened on disc. When it comes to your endless spells, I did allude in the first video that the Tome of Eyes has the same as it used to be. So the Summoning, the Link, the Transfix to Countless Eyes, the Parchment Curse, all the same. The Demonic Simulacrum is the same, so the Summoning, the Predatory, the Snapping Jaws are the same. Where the changes arose in the endless spells, while the summoning rules and things like that have stayed the same, what has changed is the Radiant Transmogrification, which at the end of the movement phase, you get to roll a dice for each unit within 9 inches of the endless spell. And on a 4-up, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, if any models were slain by this spell, before removing that first slain model, the commanding player of the endless spell can add 1 Tzeentch Chaos Spawn to their army and set it up within 3 inches of the slain model. Then they remove that slain model from play. Now, there doesn't appear to be any points changes between the latest General's Handbook and the current Battletome. However, I did notice, and I mentioned this earlier on the Karak Acolytes, that the Arcane Cataclysm has seemed to be retracted. So if you saw Arcane Cataclysm, the Zangor host were listed at 200. They're now back to 175. You saw the Curseling at 175. It's now back to 180. The Zangor Enlightened on disc were listed as 215. They're now back to 180. So I'm a little bit confused there, but otherwise it seems like nothing has changed when it comes to the points between the Battletome and the previous General's Handbook points. But as always, the true list tech of this particular new Battletome is not going to really come out until after people start playing with it, as well as the FAQ, because who knows what they're going to change or they're going to retcon again, right? We've seen a lot of micro changes across the faction, but I wouldn't say that there were any major buffs or any major nerfs. Yes, when we get down to a Warscroll level, there are some things like I mentioned, Kairos Fateweaver with the Oracle of Eternity ability. I know some people won't like losing that single dice roll, but I do love the new Kairos Spell Thief ability to take control of enemy endless spells. And I know for a fact people are not going to like you taking their Purple Sun, their Gnashing Jaws, or their Horrorghast and using it against them. It is quite interesting when I look at things like the Arcane Cataclysm and how they have retconned things like the Karak Acolytes. They had Gestalt Sorcery, then they lost it, then it's gone back, and there's a whole bunch of changes, but they're back to how they've always been. And I know some people were quite upset when I did that video, and there must be a big fandom of Karak Acolyte people. There were other big changes that you probably saw across the board. Lots of those minor heroes like the Fateskimmer, the Fluxmaster, the Blue Scribe, the Ogoroi Thermitage, the Fatemaster. Lots of save increases, which is really nice. It means that you can now get some heroes down to 3 ups or 2 ups even with like the Fatemaster if you use All Out Defense or Mystic Shield. Probably as I reflect on this particular book, I don't know if there's anything that's happened that's so dramatic that it would make me change the list that I was running last week. I might make changes based on the meta and the battle plans and things like that, but I don't think there's anything that I would say, I'm going to put you on the shelf, I no longer like you, or holy shite, this is amazing, I need to go buy it and go paint it up for my next list. There's some good changes, but nothing revolutionary or game breaking. The only probably one that I'd call out, and I mentioned I really like it, is the Gaunt Summoner and some of the ability to bring units into reserve. I really do like that rule, but that might not be for you. I guess it depends on what you want to bring. It might be something like, I don't know, a nice cheeky way to bring down flamers early into someone's face and start burninating if you're worried about someone shooting them off a little bit early, or being able to cap objectives, whatever you might want to do. I just like the reserve rule. If you missed the first video, I did a whole review of the Allegiance ability, the spell lore, the sub-factions, the match play rules like the grand strategies or battle tactics. So if you haven't looked at that, I would recommend you go check it out to get a full holistic picture of the new Battletome. But hey, that is enough from me. I will go into much greater depth when it comes to this Battletome when very soon, actually. I've already got a guest lined up. We're going to do a Battletome review, and we'll also get a couple of extra guests kind of post FAQ. I would love to hear from you what you're thinking in the comments section. Was there a Warscroll change that made you really think about manipulating your list, either removing it, adding it, maybe a sub-faction that you want to completely change, and there's a nice little rule here in the Warscroll that makes you think about building a list around it? I'd be curious to hear from you in the comment section. Let me know. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would love it if you press like on the video, as well as left me a comment to let me know what your thoughts are. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the video description. I want to give a massive shout out as well to the AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members who are going in, and the funds of supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you're all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1 on a redeploy.